Well, thank you, Acting Speaker, for the opportunity to speak in opposition, in profound opposition to this egregious bill, this massive overreach, this power grab, the Omnibus Emergency Measures and Other Acts Amendment. Sounds somewhat South American, I would have to say, in a very nasty sense. It's a 6-month extension to extreme and nasty powers that shouldn't be necessary. It shouldn't be necessary. Powers that are frankly foreign to this land, to this continent, and indeed to the broader English-speaking peoples. And to hear the member for Bentley, Acting Speaker, talk about willful negligence, well, I'd like to remind the member for Bentley that the reason why the government has been forced to extend these provisions for an extra 6 months is because of their negligence, their willful negligence, their malfeasance in public office, their crimes against the people of Victoria that has resulted in 700 citizens and more, counting every day, dying in the second wave of coronavirus because they could not manage hotel quarantine. And I'm going to keep saying this and saying this and saying this, as will my colleagues, for the next 2 years, that Victoria is in the state that it's in because of the greatest public administration failure in its history. The first priority of government is to keep its citizens safe, and the Andrews Labor government failed to do that and continuously fails to do that with this draconian lockdown, this death warrant for Victorian businesses, Victorian livelihoods and Victorians' mental health. Let's go back to when we first debated these provisions. We supported it. We supported it because we accepted that there was a need, for example, for local government meetings to be held remotely, for trials to be held without juries. We accepted that we needed extreme measures to deal with a pandemic response. And by June, after we moved out of stage 3 lockdowns the day after Mother's Day, why the Premier decided perniciously to announce those changes the day after Mother's Day still confuses many people. I think it says more about the Premier's soul than anyone else's. But the fact that we had this virus beaten, and we would have been now seeing these provisions removed, and we would have been moving to the sunlit uplands of a summer where there would be, of course, some restrictions, but the place would be basically back to normal, but for the incompetence of the Andrews Labor government, but for the crimes and the sins that they committed against the people by using private security, untrained private security to manage hotel quarantine, not the Australian Defence Force, as was offered by the Prime Minister, as the Premier said so at multiple press conferences, as the Premier has said so in various media releases, and that the Premier continues to lie at parliamentary committee hearings.
Point of order, Minister.
Acting Speaker, the member knows that that term is unparliamentary, and I think he's been here long enough to know that he cannot use that term here. So I would ask that you remind the member to make sure that his language is consistent with parliamentary standards.
Uphold the point of order. The member has been in the House long enough to know the provisions of the House and the standing orders that are to be upheld, and I caution the member to continue.
Thank you, Acting Speaker. But the crimes that have been committed against the Victorian people are not just by their hotel quarantine stuff-ups. The contact tracing system was third world. The contact tracing system allowed the virus back out into the community in its early stages when it escaped from hotel quarantine. If we'd had a decent, semi-decent even, contact tracing system, the virus could have been stopped in its tracks in June and July. But no, we were told it was fine, it was all under control. In fact, the Health Minister said, for example, with Cedar Meats, that it was handled magnificently, perfectly. Well, the Health Minister should have been long gone. 42,000 Victorians lost their jobs in August. Yet why do the people that caused the second wave, the heads of the Andrews Labor government, the Premier, the Police Minister, the Health Minister, the Jobs Minister, why do they get to keep their jobs when so many thousands of Victorians are losing theirs because of the Andrews Labor government's negligence? Why, I ask? It seems Quite unfair. In fact, it's darn side wrong. It is wrong, Acting Speaker. It's wrong that these people keep their jobs when so many Victorians are losing theirs through no fault of their own. These Victorians have done nothing wrong. They've worked hard all their lives, only to see their livelihood stripped from them because of the failures of their own government. The egregious failures of this government to do the basics right to keep the people safe, and 700 people died because of their negligence. Now, we've all received hundreds, if not thousands of emails, phone calls, people crying down the phone at us in our electorate offices, asking for some assistance. Please help us, please. I suffer from clinical depression and have done for 20 years. I used to swim to help manage my anxiety and cycled regularly at 4 a.m. This may appear strange to some, but it helps. I go on. I've got reams of these emails. I'm a sole parent to 3 children, 2 of whom have complex disabilities, and 1 of whom is currently unable to attend his special school due to stage 4 restrictions, with significant consequences for our family. I go on. Another email. For the total destruction of my business caused by this second lockdown, all that I was offered by the Andrews government has been a paltry and frankly insulting $5,000. In what world do they live in? Quite right. In what world do they live in? The socialist nirvana of the Australian Labor Party here in Melbourne, that's what it is. Hospitality business owners and their employees are being disproportionately persecuted. The very revenue that is crucial for investing in the health system, human resources, operational mechanisms, the mental health system, education, etc. These are real people with real stories, real lives that don't depend on a handout from the government, a government wage. In fact, one of them said, I've been out of work since the end of July. I don't want to sit at home and take a government handout. I want to be working. I love working. And nothing gives me more satisfaction than going to work. Let these people work. Let them go back to work for their own sanity. Let the kids go back to school for their parents' sanity, indeed for their children's development. I mean, this is beyond a joke. The harm that you are doing to Victoria and to the Victorian people for generations to come will be immense. I mean, the power grab in this bill, that an authorised officer can exercise emergency powers and detain people without a trial. I mean, habeas corpus, what happened to that? It's only been around since the Magna Carta. You're trashing the Constitution. You're trashing the Constitution for your own grubby political ends. 12.15, no free man shall be captured in prison except by the law of the land. That's the Magna Carta, and you're trashing it here in this obscene bill. This obscene changes to emergency powers. I mean, this is disgusting. This is a vile insult to our traditions of freedom and of tolerance. I remember that great American patriot, Senator John McCain, who told us nothing brings greater happiness in life than to serve a cause greater than yourself. Victoria is that cause, Acting Speaker. Peace and prosperity, the famous Big White V. I'm going to fight for the cause of the Victorian people, for their peace, liberties and prosperity every minute of every day. And these are John McCain's words. I'm going to fight to make sure every Victorian is not locked up in their homes like criminals, and that the Andrews government's response to this pandemic is proportionate and based on common sense. That I'm an Australian. I'm an Australian, a proud citizen of the greatest country in the world, and with hard work, great things are always within our reach. Fight with us. Fight with the Liberal and Nationals to restore pride in our great state, to get the place back open and ensure it's never shut down like this ever again. Fight for what's right for our country. Fight for the ideals and character of a free people. Fight for our children's future. Fight for justice and opportunity for all. Stand up for each other, but most importantly, stand up for beautiful, bountiful Victoria. We're Australians. We don't quit. We stand together, particularly when times... And we, all of us, in this place and beyond, should stand together as one and stand up against this ridiculous, overbearing, intolerant government that is frankly destroying Victoria for generations to come.
Point of order.
Just without wanting to interrupt the member for Kew's contribution, I do refer to the point of order that you upheld that came from the member for Essendon. In it, that you said that the member for Kew had been around long enough to know better. I've in fact been around for a bit longer than both of you. And the precedent of the House is actually about calling someone a liar. To say that someone lied is not actually something that's against the precedent of the House. Now, I accept that I may be wrong. And the word lie may be incorrect, but you did mention that your ruling was made based on not rulings from the chair, which I understand you're now looking at, but from a standing order. Your comments were a standing order. Could you please direct the House to the standing order that you were referring to when you made that ruling?
On the point of order, the lied or lying imputations, an accusation that a member has lied or is lying is an imputation of improper motive and a contravention of the standing orders. Hansard, 6th of September 2005, a ruling from Speaker Madigan.
Further to the point of order.
Further to the point of
you may have misheard me or misunderstood. You referred to a standing order. Which standing order were you referring to when you made your ruling?
The standing order was not referred to.
Yes, you did. You said under the standing orders.
It was a comment in relation to the broad standing orders.
Which one?
And I've just made a ruling on this.
And which one? Speaker, which one? Acting Speaker, which one?
On the point of order.
Yes, which one?
Just a second.
Which standing order you're referring to? No, I just want to know. It clearly made a ruling. You obviously know the standing orders.
The member knows.
Which one?
The member knows. The member mentioned his experience in this House.
Indeed.
And that may be more experience than the member for Kew and the member for I. However, the use of language was unparliamentary, and it is Standing Order 118.
Thanks. I'm glad you were able to get help from the clerks for that. But in future, you may want to refer to the clerks before you make rulings.
I now